All right. So first off, I want to thank everyone for joining in on this conversation. I think first, let me introduce myself. So I'm Tyreek Shepard. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm one of the co-organizers of Code for Atlanta. I am also a NAC representative here in the South region. And so basically the intent of this session is to really have a conversation. And one thing that I noticed is we have put a lot of really good work over the past few years in terms of just how do we run really efficient and effective brigades. We've had a healthy amount of work on just different infrastructures, redeployable projects, how to manage teams, and I think that's phenomenal and it is really a benefit to all of us. But what I have noticed is there are some brigades that realistically struggle just day to day. And I think before we can move toward having the most advanced brigades, in every region across the country, I think there's still this minimum point that each brigade must be able to, reach to just be successful, to have a hack night the next week and the next month. And so this conversation is really about providing support to ensure the longevity and continuity of these brigades. And so to be a little bit more explicit, what I'm looking for this conversation is, the first portion to be just a conversation about what is the experience for struggling brigades right now. And then I want to segue into, some more conversation about ideas that we could potentially put into place to support one another as peers. So I'm not really looking to create like this huge, Code for America network infrastructure necessarily, but kind of how can we as peers, lend a hand and reach out. But I think first, to make some notes, I will be taking notes. I will be using my notepad, and I will also be using the link that I put into the chat, which has the notes link that will be archived for this session. And then on top of that, if anybody else wants to add anything, feel free to use that link to share any content you'd like to write down. But first, before we go into conversation, for those that are comfortable introducing themselves and sharing, I just want to do like a really quick lightning round of understanding who's in the room. So if you would like to introduce yourself, I just ask that you do your name, your brigade affiliation, maybe a yes or no if you would identify your brigade as having struggled in some capacity throughout maybe the past year, and then your preferred pronouns so we can address everybody properly. So to go first, I'll say that I'm Tyreek. I am from Code for Atlanta. I will personally say that I do not think that my brigade has necessarily had any material struggles in the past year. And I use he, him pronouns. And then whoever is comfortable going next, and then we can jump straight into conversation after that.
Sure, I'll jump in. I'm Dan Stormont, he, him. I'm with Code for Tucson. And I would say ever since the beginning, Code for Tucson has been on since 2013. I've been captain or co-captain the entire time. And it has been a struggle just to keep continuity, both partnership, government agencies, and keeping engagement. So that's been a struggle I think we've had all along, and it continues to this day. I've got a couple projects. It's kind of hard to keep a project going when you don't have consistent participation.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing.
Hey, I'm Diana from Code for Tulsa, she, her pronouns, and I don't feel like we've really had too many struggles, although our level of activity is down some, but it's a combination of people working too much, people working on their graduate degrees, stuff like that. But for the most part, we've been able to keep slowly making progress, just at a slower pace than what we normally do.
Thank you, Diana.
I'm Heather, she, her pronouns, from Code for Milwaukee. And to be honest, I haven't been going to lead brigade meetings consistently enough to answer the question as to whether they've been having trouble or not.
Thank you. Maybe Melanieee?
Yeah, I'll go. My name is Melanieee Mazanek, she, her pronouns. I'm a co-chair of the National Advisory Council I'm currently based in Philadelphia, and I was before this in Code for Asheville and Oakland, Cleveland. I don't think I can speak to how Code for Philly is doing, to be honest. I do think that as one of the larger, more well-established brigades, I think they will weather this crisis just fine. They've also had a lot of successful leadership transition. I just want to bring to this conversation also that I've spoken to at least 4 or 5 different leaders of smaller brigades that are really struggling and who have reached out and who they aren't even really attending Brigade Congress. And I haven't seen them around anyway. And I don't know, I'm a little worried about some of our smaller brigades or the ones that are not as well established. So I just want to bring that into this conversation and think about the people we're not hearing from this weekend.
Exactly. Thank you, Melanie. All right. So from the chat, we also have Alex, who's co-captain of Code for Asheville. Thank you. We have Annie from San Jose. Thank you. And then we also have Kelly from DC. So thank you for chiming in the chat as well.
I can go.
Introduce myself.
Go ahead, please.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Jacqueline. I'm a UX designer research strategist in New York City. I don't want to speak to because New York actually has a bunch of different things going on, and I kind of participate when I can. When I read the subject of this, it reminded me of a Code for America hackathon 5 years ago that I actually created an app for OEM FEMA for their certified, it's called CERT, and I believe it's Certified Emergency Response Team. It's basically like the auxiliary of the police and the fire department, but for first responders. So I actually thought it was about that, but I'm happy to stay, and New York has a lot of initiatives. I would say from my own experience, they're somewhat siloed. So I don't even know probably about half of them, because there's the mayor's office who has lots of other mayor's offices. And then there's, Code for America. And then there's the Beta NYC group. And then there's civic tech groups. And then there's the Manhattan Borough president helped get the open data initiative through the city council when she was there. She was my city councilwoman. So that's just my experience. And I just got an invitation to something on Friday that I didn't end up being able to attend, but I saw there were more sessions today. But so, hi.
Thank you for joining us. All right. So we have Kelly, who's here from Oakland also, Ben from Hawaii, Liani from Austin. Thank you all. All right. So I guess so we're about to scratch on about 2:15. So I want to make sure that we can use the remainder of the time. So there are any people that want to verbally introduce before, I would say maybe right now before we segue into some of the more meatier pieces of the conversation. But good turnout. All right. So first, I appreciate everybody for introducing. So maybe we can, feel a little more at home, have some community. We can recognize some names and faces now. But I really wanted to, at this point, maybe take a little bit of a step back. And for some of the brigades who have identified as, maybe smaller, less established or struggling, I think one of the things that's important to me is not only just knowing that it's happening, but actually know exactly what is happening. Because I don't think we can necessarily lend support to one another without actually knowing the experience. So if there's anyone who is from one of these brigades or has seen it that would like to maybe give a quick or just, discuss a little bit about it for context, that would be really nice. Otherwise, I'm still prepared to continue the conversation, but I want to put it into the hands of somebody who maybe is experienced in describing what a struggle right now is. No pressure, though. I know people say no pressure, that makes pressure, but.
Even though I said that Tulsa hasn't really had much in the way of struggles, something that I've observed within our own brigade and that I've heard from many other smaller brigades, because I feel like we're a medium, maybe large, but definitely a strong medium-sized brigade, is lack of leadership. There tends to be just one person pulling all the weight right now, and I definitely feel that way in Tulsa right now. So yeah, trying to get more people to step up. I have no problem getting volunteers and people to work on tasks, but trying to get anybody else to carry the heavy load of leading the brigade is difficult.
That's true. I was talking to another brigade leader, and they said it was the exact same thing for them in another region, was that just like the leadership continuity right now is an issue because people are going through different scenarios, employment wise and, working, and just like the whole circumstance of being a full-time professional for many of us. And then also trying to be a full-time, like nonprofit organizer has been a struggle between multiple folks. And on that piece, that was something that worried me, just because like my brigade, we have like 5 folks on the leadership team, like a very core established team who's cross-trained to pretty much do whatever needs to be done. But what I'm learning also is that there are a lot of brigades who there's one person who has all the connections. There's one person who does all the fundraising and manages the money. There's one person that gets the sponsorship space. And then you realize once you remove them out of the equation, how do we operate? How do we do what we need to do? And I think, there's a lot of detail about that is archived in multiple places, but I'm still trying to figure out, just for those simply there, what do we do? I will say, like, one of the ideas that I had come up with was, for example, say Tulsa needed just project, like hack night facilitation, or maybe some project management. A person like me who comes from a really well-staffed brigade could easily say, okay, well, for the next month or two, I'm going to work with Diana to kind of help her out in multiple spaces there. So what I would say is, like, I'm looking more towards of like, how do we individually kind of help each other out? And so when I hear a scenario like that one, that's something that I think that I could do to help out, just for context of what I was thinking when I kind of brought up this session. But Diana, thank you for that one. Do you think that the thing that's going on right now with Tulsa, with less leaders, is a direct result of maybe just the circumstance of like the pandemic, or is it something that you've been monitoring and kind of seeing over some time?
Well, it's a little bit of stuff. Because in our core leadership, we've got probably 6 people. I know there's a lot of racial tension going on in Tulsa right now. And so that's been hitting Carlos really hard, and he just finished his master's degree, so I think he's kind of taking a breath. Another one is getting her master's degree right now to work for Mozilla, and Mozilla just did a bunch of layoffs, and so their workload has just quadrupled. And the other one is the president of our the Tucklahoma nonprofit, and so her workload picked up very heavily in January. So that's leaving me to kind of carry carry everything else. So it's a combination of things.
So not to put you on the spot again, but with a lot of things falling on you, like if we were to say right now, how can we help out Diana and Tulsa? What would be maybe some things that you would see as like slightly immediately actionable or reasonably actionable?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I struggle with is I have a technical background, but it's not super strong. Most of it was front-end web development. So when it comes to like the apps that we're creating and things like that, I don't know what we need done. And those technical people that have been managing that are the ones who have stepped back because of work and working on a master's degree. So trying to help identify what are some more of the tasks or what is the work that needs to be done on our Clear My Record, and then I'm carrying kind of the load for CourtBot right now and trying to help field all those questions and not know how to answer the accessing the data and things like that. I do have a volunteer who can help with that, but I know Sayon's super burned out, and everybody keeps reaching out to her, and she keeps answering the same questions over and over and over again. So I'm trying to get the playbook put together. And I've been working with a few different people from around Code for America, other brigades, trying to put that together, but trying to get that knocked out would be great. And yeah, just trying to identify some of the work that needs to be done so that I can help facilitate the getting those technical tasks completed, because I've got volunteers like crazy. We've got several coding schools in the city, and they're all very eager to work on some volunteer projects so that they can get experience under their belt so that when they graduate, they can go get a job. So we've got a great partnership going there, but it's, yeah, trying to develop my project management skills.
So on that one, can I, well, first, before we keep moving, is there anyone else who maybe has, a similar or another perspective to share about like the struggling brigade? Ben and Melanie and Bonnie? We can just keep going.
Actually, I could probably share, because I think Code for Tucson definitely falls into the small brigade category, and we always have, the maximum we've ever had of consistent membership. If you look at, just who's on our meetup page or something like that, you say, oh, you got lots of people. But I mean, in reality, when we were doing in-person meetings, we were happy when we had 12 people around a table. So, we've always been a smaller brigade. When we initially started out, it was just me working with Startup Tucson to just get something going under their umbrella. And then I had my co-captain, Michelle Hertzfeld. She moved from DC. So we actually went through all the forming the leadership team, and we had a pretty decent team. We had some people came in from the University of Arizona, had a couple of people that were involved with Startup Tucson that joined it. So, we had a pretty good leadership team, but even then, a lot of times the burden fell on Michelle and myself. And so we've been kind of the ones that were carrying it. And then Michelle, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for her, she just moved to Australia. So now I'm the lone captain again. And so, I think the real struggle is it's hard to keep that engagement. And I don't know the answer either, but I mean, it's hard to keep that engagement of that leadership team, the people that are working the fundraising, that are working the outreach. And then the other problem we've had is we could find a good project, good connection, somebody in city government or county government to work on a project with them, but then their funding get cut, their boss would redirect them to another project, or they would retire, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, we don't have somebody to fill this person's place, and now we've just lost our contact. And so it seems like it's a constant thing. And again, I'm going to reach out to the mayor's office again. There's a new initiative they just started, and I know the person who's running that, so I'm going to reach out to her and try and see how we can connect Code for Tucson with what they're doing here in the city on the climate emergency declaration that they just made. But that's been an ongoing struggle. And so I don't really know from the Code for America standpoint how you deal with that, but I suspect that's probably the case for a lot of smaller brigades, is that somebody was really excited about trying to do something in their community. They started the brigade maybe by themselves or just a couple of people in their leadership team. And then it's just been a challenge trying to connect with the right people to work on projects and to be able to champion the projects. There are plenty of people who will say, hey, I'd really like you to make app X for me. Then they're not willing to actually be engaged to work with you on it. And so, we're not going to take on a project we don't have a chance to be able to say they want. When you give a prototype, you want to be able to get some feedback on it. And so if you can't get that kind of connection with someone, then we won't work with them. So, I mean, that's really the challenge I've seen. And of course, I have the same thing that Diana was talking about. We've got a lot of code camp graduates and people who are trying to learn coding, and it's great. And I'm trying to figure out ways to engage them. In fact, right now, I'm just doing a series of HTML workshops with the UX at UA group. That's kind of what our monthly Code for Tucson meetings have been right now, is just doing those to try and get some new people some skills so that they can work on projects. But it's a real challenge because you have different levels. You kind of, for a lot of projects, you need somebody who's actually got some experience and has those skills that you need to get something done fairly quickly. But at the same time, you do want to accommodate the people who are trying to learn and that really want to develop those skills. So it's kind of like two groups that we're trying to accommodate. In fact, for a while during our hackathon, our civic hack night meetings, I would have like half of it would be for introducing new concepts to the newbies, and then the other part would be project work with the people who are experienced. And so that was kind of, I don't know how well that worked, because it got to be kind of a little weird where we're trying to divide our attentions that way too. But yeah, that's kind of the situation I've seen. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but that's definitely what I've seen here in a smaller brigade in a city that you would think we'd have more participation, since we do have 1 million people in Tucson, but it's just we don't really have the tech base that some of the other places like Phoenix does, for example.
Thank you. And also Bonnie, Ben, and Melanie also want to share.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what Diana shared and what Dan shared, we've experienced all those things too. I think I would highlight people leaving, and that's something that's common within our tech community. Is we get interest from people who come in, and then because of a job they relocate out. So we have a little bit of a revolving door. Partners and champions leaving. So people that we worked with, those projects sometimes get stuck when those individuals leave. So that's something that we struggle with. And then what Diana was talking about in terms of even if I was capable of understanding all the technology in a project, that itself is very time consuming, in addition to the various project management and organizational management roles. So that additional task to understand how to break it down and or help develop the technical leads on those projects to have more organizational leadership skills, that becomes another task, and that's a challenge for us as a small brigade.
I was hoping to lift up some of the feedback I've gotten from leaders of small brigades who aren't here, I suspect because they're burned out. So I'm going to share it anonymously. They did give me permission to share it, but I am going to share it anonymously. One is someone who is afraid their brigade is dying because they can't upkeep it. They feel like they're running out of options and they don't want it to die on their watch. They were curious if I knew anyone who might have some advice. And if I talked to this person, I wasn't like, I don't know, good luck. But I think there are, I guess from what I got from that conversation was that someone kind of looking to connect somehow, and maybe also kind of lacking some of the bandwidth, to really be able to do that. They had their longest time leader drop out and just ghost. And then another person who is maybe not able to contribute as much time. And so kind of they're the one left holding the bag a little bit. Like they had a whole leadership team and then it was like sort of just them. So that's one brigade leader. Another brigade leader who reached out to me, and I wanted to also just share some of the feedback. They were saying that they're like a small brigade, and they when like emails come in or things that I had in my mind been framing as like, this is an opportunity for brigades, they were like, this is too many things. You're sending me too many things. This is too many asks. Please stop asking me for labor. Like, it's just me. I have a day job. I'm working on all of the projects and also a day job and also organizing. So that I just wanted to share those two pieces of feedback I got from brigade leaders who are kind of in this position.
So I wanted to say something, can you guys hear me? Okay, good. This is not on behalf of like the New York Brigade or anything, because I think there's quite a number of people, but I've been part of other organizing groups, like for me within interaction design and user experience. And I think all like volunteer tech related organizations have overlapping issues. So I just wanted to like let people know that, people leaving or core people being just a few people with a lot of people who will volunteer, but just like on an ad hoc basis, like it's a universal problem. And I think doing things like shared Google Docs and things have helped us in the past, but it's a like struggle that is still ongoing. So that's all.
So I love the idea of a small brigade hack night that some people have been talking about in the chat, where you guys could essentially make a bigger brigade by all, joining together on one hack night as a way of working on projects together, and that might help with like not having the expertise that your particular brigade needs. If some other brigade has somebody who's very technical, you know, that could be definitely a benefit. But I also want to float the idea of adopting brigades, that maybe some of the brigades that are more successful, you know, because of they have more people, or they've just had, you know, more continuity of leadership, for whatever reason, they're surviving or thriving during this time. Basically adopting another brigade. There's been a brigade in Orange County that wanted to start up, and I'm really supportive of us getting another brigade because there's a lot of space between LA and San Diego, and a whole huge tech community between that's never really been able to get a brigade off their ground. And I've encouraged the people who are wanting to start that brigade to actually just join our brigade, but have a subgroup within the brigade, which is code for Orange County, and start building that community inside of our community so that it has enough members and it has enough people willing to step up for leadership by the time they're ready to graduate and then do in-person events when that time comes again. So I like that idea of basically, let's piggyback some of the smaller brigades on the communities of the bigger brigades, because sometimes you just need someone you need to be able to post in Slack saying, I need help with X. And then the other thing about having people that are highly technical or highly motivated or highly involved in projects leave is that we really had that problem at Hack for LA when I joined. Projects would just die when the champion left because they were being treated like they were personal projects. And the way we resolve that is that we tell everybody walking in the door, it's a relay race that never ends. And your job is not to just code as fast as you can or build something as fast as you can, and hopefully you build it before you leave. Your job is to set up infrastructure on your project and communication that lives on beyond you, that you are the steward of the public good. And so that means not coding as fast, but spending more time documenting. And when a new person who barely knows how to code comes on, you know, we encourage them to basically document somebody else's work, that they can interview that person, and that is going to help them raise their skill level up. And it makes sense for the person who is the more senior, doesn't have to do the documentation because the junior person can do it, and they both get something out of it. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Bonnie. All right, so just to be mindful, so we are at 2:30. Within like the next 5 minutes, I kind of want to segue into some more action-oriented conversation. But before we do that, does anybody else want to share? I know we've had some more folks join the group. So what we just went through a few moments ago is that folks across the Brigade Network were sharing their experience with struggles that they've had over, you know, the past year or some that they've seen. And we're talking about that in context of how we as peers in the network can support. But before we move on to action-oriented talks, does anybody else want to chime in on the first piece of just what their brigade experience has been like? All right.
Yeah. Hi, I can tell you about Code for Charlottesville a little bit. We've been lucky. We do have. It feels like we have enough volunteers to get a couple projects through, and we've had a couple wins. But I've been trying to spin up a new project since we've had one that reached a good stopping point. And it's been the biggest challenge right now, I think, is finding community partners who have bandwidth to work with us. You know, so like I've been doing the rounds and nothing seems to be working. And so I'd love any of your thoughts about if there's any like low-hanging fruit we might be able to go for.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think trying to explain Code for America and its relevance and why, for various organizations, for various reasons, that I think that's a challenge.
I know we've had, and sorry to sidebar for a second, I know maybe some folks from NAC may remember, but I thought I remembered within maybe the last year, I saw some materials that word that could be used to explain, like Code for America. I know, like when we go to Summit and you want an employer or somebody to sponsor it, do we have any sort of standard materials that brigade members and organizers use to network and partner with, you know, the local partners? Is that somewhere?
Not that I'm familiar with. I know, and Diana can probably speak to this too. In National Day of Civic Hacking materials, one of the things that we developed was like a partner outreach email. I think we did that in that, because I know we did that at our brigade level too, is to try to, you know, provide some context for the event and the organization and why someone might want to partner. And that was a task, a discrete task that we had to take on. So I don't remember us referring to any existing materials for that.
Okay, cool. I see Tom said that Code for Boston may have one, so we can check into that afterward.
That's usually my like go-to, is like, it's probably Code for Boston has one. Liani's been trying to sort out some audio issues though.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, okay.
Okay, I can see my thumbnail going. Must have just been quiet earlier. I would say Open Austin is facing just two challenges, but one from a strategy perspective and one from an implementation perspective. I would say on the core team, we're very keenly aware that we have very little capacity, but then there's still the concept that even though we have very limited capacity, very few members, life pulling us in different directions, the idea of what should be prioritized it always seems to come up at every core team meeting. And I think, and so that's the question of strategy. At what point does just discussing what is the best path of action to follow then like yielding diminishing returns? At what point do you just pick something and go with it? And then the other arm, implementation, I think that's what y'all were saying earlier. Can we lend brigade members or lend help in some way that's like, okay, we have a specific task, like getting the website like put into WordPress. That needs to be a task that has to be done, but no one on the core team is like stepping up to do those things. And so I see our challenges, at least on the Open Austin side, less of sustaining momentum and sustaining motivation through a project to project basis. That's partially because I have blinders on. I'm like, okay, they're surviving, they're meeting every week, fine, I don't care. But from a core team perspective, that's what we're struggling with, not just the implementation, but also like interpersonally, can we pick one and go with it?
I have one more thing about the partnership conversation as well. The one pro technique that I've seen is when you're partnering with other organizations, invite like someone from the organization to like present at your hack night about what their work is. And I mean, maybe follow that up with like going to their event as well, but having them present serves like a three-part purpose. It gets brigade members excited about what they're doing. It allows them to like explain it really well. And it like is a thing that everybody in your brigade does together, and like is something you don't have to really put that much thought into in terms of like the presentation. So huge fan of like inviting external speakers in from cool community groups that you want to partner with.
You know, Tom, I never really thought about that, because like that's something that we do here in Atlanta, is that, well, just like Dan said, anytime a project is pitched, we have the community partner pitch it. But I never realized that might not be the standard across like all of the brigades. And I didn't realize how big of a difference that probably makes with folks getting excited to do projects for us, because you hear directly from who's sponsoring the work, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also the definition of the pitch is also like another variable. Is like in some cases you might have already pre-scoped the project with the partner. In other cases, you might just say like, hey, this partner's doing like really good work. We don't know what a project with them would look like yet, but we just want to have them over and like have them talk about their work, and and then like from that primordial soup of ideas, a project will like can come out of it. I guess it depends. That comes out of your brigade's culture for like how loose you want to be with like with that kind of thing. I know a lot of brigades are a lot more leadership driven in terms of defining the projects, and some brigades are very much just like, we are a space for pitching ideas. So I guess that kind of is another thing.
All right, so with us being at 2:40, first, thank you everybody for sharing their perspectives and experiences with brigade struggles. But with the last 20 minutes that we have, I wanted to just talk about, now that we've identified a lot of this, and we've already started to have the conversations both verbally and I see in the chat of how can we directly support. I will say for me, one of my biggest ideas was actually along the lines of Bonnie's. How Bonnie's mentioned partnering with, maybe a smaller brigade or newer brigade. One of the things that we talked about in Atlanta was, do we have the ability to partner more closely with Open Savannah? There are only 2 brigades in the state of Georgia. If you are familiar with the brigade, you know that, within the past year, they've had multiple opportunities where we probably could have stepped in and support a lot more than we have. And so we did table the conversation till after Congress, but we want to talk about how we can connect with them as, what we would consider to be a smaller brigade. Not necessarily going in and saying like, here's how you do this and that, but it could be something as simple as like, hey, do y'all want to collab on a project? We do our hack nights on Tuesday, but if y'all do alternating weeks on Thursday, we can make sure we have a team that can support then, and where we're kind of like both equally contributing, not one, doing charity for another or something, but just collaboration. So I will say that when I talk about action-oriented movements, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that, like, for me, an action would be, join a project for another brigade. Even if it's just one person, they might need a UX person. If I do UX, it's just kind of like, okay, I can step in and help in this capacity. And so I just want to talk about ideas across the network for you all of, if we could get direct support from our peers, what does that look like to you and what would be most useful to you? And so my first idea was just literally partnering across brigades on projects. And I'm taking notes also as we go.
I love that idea because I was just thinking it would be wonderful to get our my brain just went blank. Clear my record. Our leader who is working on her data science master's right now was the project lead for that. So since she is taking a break right now to focus on it, it would be great to get some people who have some experience with that to come in, kind of look at what we've done so far, give some guidance and advice, see if there's things that we can cross collaborate on, something like that.
I think that's good. And I mean, and Diana, I think at this point, most brigades have touched Clear My Record, to some extent. I mean, we've done like a lot of, criminal justice work down here. So I know in my brigade, I have folks that I can talk to like Sean, but there are also a few panels that happened this week. I need to look and see who was sitting on them, but I think we have like a, almost like an in-house group of resident folks who are really helpful there, but we can talk about that too. But has anybody here explicitly done any of that work also? Like Clear My Record? Because honestly, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start asking people if they have capacity to like support a little bit, but that's a good one. So right now I have, collaborating across the network to do different projects. I do have a note for Tulsa for some more explicit support in the Clear My Record area. Okay.
An idea, if I could put it out there.
Yes.
So some people come to any sort of volunteer organization to lend their expertise, and other people come to kind of learn something new. And so they are, let's say, have a steeper learning curve, but they're very engaged. So it occurred to me that, for instance, like hypothetically, if I was partnered with a developer, I could teach them about UX while they could teach me about like Swift, which I've never used before, but I know what it is and its basic capabilities. So maybe on like a personal level, people don't have to just feel like they're giving what they can or just trying to like get experience, but kind of like doing both at once. The same with mentorships. Any program I'm in that that suggests what mentorships, whether it's women in tech or a New York City, whatever, like I always say I'll be a mentor and a mentee. You know, it goes both ways. So that's my idea.
Thank you. I just wrote, I love that one, be a mentor and a mentee. It's really good. Okay.
Tyreek, I wanted to share something that I've observed about my participation in Code for America, and then something that I interpret as a struggle from my brigade, and that is that, like, every time I've been able to invest more time in Code for America, it has been extremely rewarding for me personally. Professional, I've developed all of the things that I care about, including on the professional side, even though I'm, you know, quote, working for free or volunteering. And I believe that that's the effect that happens for everyone when they're able to do it, right? And so to the extent that I'm able to accommodate that, and I guess that's that I would characterize that as a luxury, because not everyone is in that position, that I have the experience that tells me that's a worthwhile investment of time. One of the things that I think we struggle to connect as a brigade overall is how to both scope the commitment that's required to do something different than we're already doing, and to connect it to the potential benefits. So, for example, just getting someone to come to in-person Brigade Congress, which is a 3-day time commitment that Code for America would entirely support. There would be no cost to the participant. I think that would, my hypothesis would be that anyone from our brigade that attended would be really energized and personally supported by that experience. But it's very difficult to, I have never had success in getting somebody to do it. So I think that there is a commitment hurdle on the part of the participant for any of the things that we're talking about, whether it's becoming a captain, leading a project, being a mentor or mentee. There's a time commitment at the very least. And when someone can make that time commitment, whatever gets them across that hurdle is a big first step for any of the other ideas, right? It's both a necessary precondition, but also one of the I think big ingredients for success, because even when someone steps up to be a captain, if they haven't properly scoped the time commitment, then it ends up being a real struggle to be successful.
Thank you, Pam. Exactly. I
Can I
think.
ask a really quick question?
Yes.
To Benjamin, which is, and I mean, take as a caveat that I'm from New York. I'm involved somewhat with like Beta NYC and other civic design groups, but like I haven't, like I don't want to say anything negative because I know there's a lot of people in New York doing civic stuff, and if anything, they don't know about each other, which is a problem. But what you just said about like a 3-day conference, like I've never actually like heard of, and I just wondered, like, is that something that you guys are also doing virtually because of COVID, or like how could people like me who might want to go to that, or maybe it's post-COVID, go to that, like even learn about it other than in a room like this?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think to that point, a lot of my involvement, when I came to Brigade Congress for the first time, I was not heavily involved with my brigade, and I have since converged and become very involved in my brigade, but my interest came from the outside, and so and partially because of Brigade Congress, and so I think that there's an opportunity to reach out beyond the brigade, who's currently volunteering in the brigade, to help support that work that the brigade's doing. And I think it's something that we need to balance with also providing direct support for the volunteers that are there and have been doing the work for years, who may want different things, but also bring different things to the table than say someone who's not currently volunteering, but might be if they have the right support. And just to answer your question, I don't know how somebody finds out about it. I found out because I was on the Code for America email list and had been kind of semi-connected to it over the years.
I mean, I may have had an email about it, but I didn't see it. I participated in a Code for America hackathon that I actually won just before Hurricane Sandy. And it was kind of sad because the app I created was for OEM FEMA, and they never got to talk to me about it because Sandy, theoretically, they're still doing Sandy repairs more than 5 years later in New York, but I just call those infrastructure repairs that are being funded by something from Sandy. Because if it's worked for the last 5 years, you know, it's not direct need. But after I won, I was invited to something called GovTech, which usually only like vendors or go to. But then after that, I've just been sporadically involved with like Code for America or Beta NYC or Civic Design, like things in New York City. But there's, if anything, because we have a plethora of groups and people interested, I don't experience a unified message. And maybe that's just like kind of like the problem of the luxury of being in a city with a lot of government and a lot of interested people. I don't know. Like whenever I go to a Code for America or Beta NYC thing, I really enjoy it. But I would just say, I think it's like very different depending on the size of your city and the size of your time commitment, et cetera. And so for instance, like you said, you went to that like with a project in mind or something. Like I have no idea what being on a brigade technically, like I have no idea what that time commitment is. I know if I attend an event, I know if I, you know, want an idea and I partner with people to make it happen. But I think maybe like the lack of transparency about like what like roles are, people might be just afraid to take on them. But that's just my personal like experience across many like volunteer professional organizations.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. That's familiar.
So,
can I add one thing really quick?
yes, absolutely.
I noticed there's some stuff going on in chat about staying tuned to like events that are happening and everything. I just want to make a quick plug for the Network Sparks newsletter that M puts together and mails out. So we've had some deliverability issues that we're working out. So you all should be getting it, but definitely if you are not familiar with the Network Sparks or you just don't open it, I would recommend checking it out because it is great. If you are not getting it, let me know. I'll make sure you're subscribed. It's got like, it's a bi-weekly newsletter and it's got like events that are coming up, like all the different like project pitch sessions, the regional organized calls, stuff like that. And it can also be any event that's open to the entire network can be included in there. So you might occasionally see stuff like Code for Boston just is organizing like a job fair that is open to everybody. And so like stuff like that is in there. So definitely use that. And let me know if you have any problems with that.
Thank you, Tom. All right, so we have about 8 minutes left. And of course, we will have these notes available and they'll be cleaned up and synopsized so that you can access them. But I think since we only have a few minutes, for those that are comfortable sharing, I think maybe something that could be useful just for ourselves too is maybe we can go around the room and just say a way that we think that we personally could contribute to our brigade peers. Because I think it's one thing to identify what we think we would need, but also what could we contribute to? And so for me to start, I think that one way that I realistically could contribute to a peer brigade is offering to collaborate on, a project, but then also with just some of their, regular old leadership maintenance is one thing. So if you need folks that help you facilitate a project or help you facilitate, a Zoom hack night, or maybe something of that sort. I do a lot of that for us in Atlanta. So that's kind of like my kind of go-to is almost being like the face of our brigade and, one of the primary leaders. And I would love to support as however necessary for any other leaders who just need to take some things off of their plate. So that's how I see myself realistically being able to contribute in a pretty quick fashion. But not everyone has to share, just whoever is interested in the time that we have remaining.
I'll chime in. Something actionable I think I can do realistically right now is reaching out to Code for South and Code for Tampa Bay, and having a conversation where we can scope out our needs as brigades within the Florida region and seeing how we can best help each other out. So setting up a meeting, like just scheduling a date and just like having that conversation.
I'm gonna say something which is just I am trying to be more involved in the New York City area, but I'm hoping maybe Tom, like you mentioned that newsletter I wasn't even aware of. If you can help connect me to the right people, I think that's actually an issue people have with lots of volunteer organizations, like not knowing who to ask or what list or email or Slack or Google Doc, whatever, to have access to. So that's my personal like commitment, but I'm hoping maybe you, Tom, or someone else like in this room can help me navigate, because I don't know, like I didn't know about that newsletter. So that's my.
Also from the chat, I'm seeing a few comments. I see where Dana is saying that she could help with finding new volunteers, team building, retainment. Annie has mentioned mentoring. Diana also mentioned mentoring as well. So that's a pretty big deal. So Ben also volunteering to mentor. And I will say this too, though, the mentoring piece goes a long, long way. I was having a conversation this week. If you think about even just how we interact with one another, a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I did not know what an unconference was. It was not until Bonnie gave me a slip of paper in Oakland, California that said, come to this room at this time. And I went to unconference, and it's actually my favorite part of all the conferences. Ben, who is co-chair of NAC, I talk to Ben all the time. I consider Ben to be a mentor. Veronica, Tom, Krystina, people just interacting with folks all the time has been a big help in me just motivating myself to continue to do the work. And so it doesn't have to be, I'm going to do this type of code, or I'm going to run this project. It really can just be being a community member. We come from big brigades, small brigades, regions with 8 brigades in one state or one. It's really, to me, I think the first step is being open to actually being a active participant in the community. And from that part, I think you kind of start to grow the altruism, the empathy, and you really want to support in whichever capacities that you can. And so I know we only have like 30 seconds basically, but I'm really happy to have this conversation. I did see in the chat about, some indexing, things like that. And I'm really interested in, how we can elevate it a little bit further and make this more tangible. And at least at a minimum, start connecting folks who are willing to help to those who are willing to receive it. But I am very open to continuing this conversation. I will be transparent. I'm going back to my own brigade with some of these notes, but then also from a NAC perspective, I'm looking to kind of see how I can help facilitate a little bit more of this. And so if you would be interested, of course, I'm on Slack, Tyreek. My email is tyreek@codeforatlanta.org. And if you would like to be a part of this, whether from a, helping organize or just being vocal about what you would like to see, I welcome all of that interaction and all of that communication because it's going to help a lot. But I really appreciate everybody just being here, being present, transparent. We held a good 19, 20 participants the whole time. And honestly, that's a huge win in my book, just because I know how Zoom fatigue is. But I just really appreciate it. But I have nothing else to say, so I can be quiet. But as we close out, just know that this is recorded. I'm not sure where to access the full recording, but the note link is here. I think that's it. I just dropped the notes again, but we can share this again in Slack too. Just hit me up for anything, but there will be more conversations about this, and ideally less conversations and more action, upcoming, but we will definitely be working on this. So thank you so much. All right. Tom, I think that is basically it for us.
I think that's good. Next hour, we have 2 sessions, I believe. I don't have the schedule up, so you'll just have to check the agenda yourself. And, or is it the 3 sessions? I think that might be the 3-session hour. Anyway, check the schedule and I'll be back in this room. So I'll see you back here in like 10 seconds.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
No.
Well, me and Bonnie need to say one more thing.
I'm just kidding.
First, I want to apologize for not saying NAC. NAC is National Advisory Council. And you can run for it coming up pretty soon. So
I was going to say the 2 sessions are onboarding and managing volunteers, which is an unconference, and why resource directories are unsustainable and what we can do about it.
Thanks, Bonnie. Cool. All right. So organizing volunteers will be right back here. I'm going to have to close the room and reopen it so the recordings get separated. And so see you back here in a sec.
All right. Thank you all. We'll see you later.